Defense Matters, a podcast about defense, technology, and the power of that movement. An Israel Defense production in association with IAI. Hello and welcome to Defense Matters, a podcast about all matters of defense and why they matter. I'm Aron Heller, your host, and we are back from our extended summer vacation. Hope you've had a chance to catch up on all of our episodes on our various platforms and are all up to speed on our journey into the worlds of security, technology, military and strategic affairs, and everything in between. Every episode, we've been catching up on a relevant topic and discussing it and analyzing it with a featured guest. Today, we are going to be diving into another episode focusing on the Israeli government, the new Israeli government, which is expected to take office within the next week. Benjamin Netanyahu is back after a year-long hiatus, and with him he's bringing the most right-wing government in Israeli history, comprising solely of nationalist and right-wing ultra-Orthodox Jewish parties. Highlighting this new approach is Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's supposed to be the new Minister for National Security. He's a disciple of the late Rabbi Amir Ohana, and should be a lightning rod of controversy. He's come to prominence promising to restore order on the streets and battle domestic violence. But the regional threats have all pretty much stayed the same, as this new government is going to have to grapple with everything around it. So how is all this going to take shape? For that today, I am pleased to be joined by retired General Eitan Dangot, a former head of the Coordinator of Government Activities in the Territories, and today a Senior Research Fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So let's get started before we dive into all the details. Let's just have a bit overview of the big picture. There's a new government. They're going to have to bring their own kind of approach, but essentially nothing much has changed as far as the major threats that Israel faces.
The subjects are not has been changed, but I think that the weight of the subject or the priorities between them should be tested very carefully by the new government. And I think what is coming on the table for the new government or the new cabinet on security and political issues will be, first of all, to identify what are the urgent and the important problems they should sit and think and identify the Israeli strategic under this new government. Because as we can talk about Iran, the north threat towards Israel, the problem that Israel has with the Palestinian authorities, but I think that since May 21, in the last occasion of clash between Israel and Hamas around Jerusalem, around Sheikh Jarrah issue, what happened there brought a change that on the head of it, you got for already more than 1 year, a new terror activity that joined to the individual terror that has a lot of impact. Now we are calling it like a fire terror with the new main problem. I think they should test. It means the law and order inside Israel. The problem with that we have, especially with a minority of the Israeli Arabs, but I think that they have a lot of challenge, first of all, to decide what they are going to check it immediately, what will be the priorities, how they are going to solve it, and this is really a very sensitive junction.
Well, let's start focusing really on the Palestinian issue. That I know is your area of expertise, where you served many years in the military. So for some time, the defense establishment's been saying that it's very volatile, and they're warning that something is brewing over there. This government doesn't even offer them the prospect of anything, the Palestinian state. So that can't help for stability, can it?
There are two, let's say, sides for it. First of all, this is the right government for studying or escorting. We have to remember one thing. The former government has been only for 1 year and few months, that's all. And all the last 10, 20, 12 years were under Bibi Netanyahu, serving as a prime minister in a different government. And the leader, Bibi Netanyahu, I think should be sit and think and decide what will be his policy, because for the last 3 years in his time, and now with the last government, I think that between them, the Palestinian problem has been changed. We are not already under Abu Mazen period. We are on the day after Abu Mazen that has been started on May 21. Secondly, the terror of the Palestinians. Third, the time of, while I put like a sentence, economy, security is economy, that you see that with the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, has been reacted in a different way compared to the atmosphere in the Middle East, also compared to Gaza, was they prefer and vote by legs to go to work, to build their economy, a family cabin situation. There were only a minority of people that were the people who choose the terror against Israel. On the other hand, you don't see any kind of change by the Israeli former governments about it. Nothing on the horizon of the political options for what was declared by Bibi Netanyahu and Bar Ilan's speech on 2 states to 2 nations. So on one end, the Palestinians in a different period, Palestinian authorities has a lot of interior problem. The entity is very weak. The population in West Bank has another kind of way to demonstrate against their government, against their authorities, against Abu Mazen. The day Abu Mazen has been started, who will be after him? On the other end, the new government has been already stated some statements about their opinion, about right opinion, not to deal with the Palestinians, or some of them are not believing in the two-state solution as well.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, because Netanyahu, he was in power for 10 years before then. But is this the same Netanyahu? Because before he had Barak, he had Levin, he had all these different people around him. Now he's got Ben-Gvir, he's got Smotrich. Netanyahu's the most left-wing person in this government.
I think that a lot of weight under Netanyahu's shoulders, much more than the past. Besides, you really don't know what will be his policy for the new situation on the Middle East. He's the advocate for an Abraham agreement. He knows much more better the Americans. He get a new partner from the American by the Democratic Party. Biden is the president today. Mm-hmm. And you're right, he has another partner that has a lot of weight in the government. One of them is the Minister of Finance and got a lot of right on the issue of the Palestinian, on the West Bank especially. The second one got the main problem and the urgent problem of Israel today is the interior problem, as I said, crime that is very close to terror. This is one of the main problems to bring back to the two parties, to two sides of Israel, the Negev in the south and the Galil mountains on the north, to bring back to the people who are living there the feeling of safety. We are in a great, I think, issues that we have to solve. A lot of rifles, other kind of arms are on the ground using today for criminals, but it's in a short time it can move towards terror activities, and Bibi Netanyahu has to balance it with his problem towards the Abraham Arab countries agreement, which is really a miracle in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And above all, you have the main threat to Israel in the Middle East, taken by Iran as the leader, and you have from the north like a border between Rosh Negra on the west point with Lebanon on the border, till the triangle meetings between Israel, Syria, and Lebanon, which Iran, without being physically a border with Israel, they are the main impact about the atmosphere.
Well, let me ask you about that, because those are all the similar things we've had for a long time, the regional threats on Israel. But the difference in this government is really going to be two of those guys you mentioned now. You've got this guy Smotrich, who's going to be in the finance ministry and is going to have responsibility for things in the West Bank. And you've got Ben-Gvir, who's going to have almost like a personal sort of, militia almost that he has control over. So do you think the defense establishment is worried about these guys? Do you think that they're like paper tigers, or are they really going to be something that could change something?
First of all, the defense structure in Israel is very strong. I think it's the main strong in the Middle East. as my former Minister of Defense, Ehud Barak, which I was his aide military officer, said always, we are the strongest around us on 1,500 kilometers. And that gives Israel a lot of opportunity to impact and also to create by economy. Israel is under change. We had a lot of opportunities because we are now one of the main operators on supplying gas to the Middle East area. Secondly, I think that concerning your question about it, this structure is strong. The problem today are the two main subjects that are really urgent for Israel to solve and to deal about. I mean the internal situation and the Palestinian problems. By giving some rights under the agreement of the coalition, I think was creating two kind of problems. First of all, you're right, the structure of the military way of working, of operating the forces can be damaged by this kind of thing. Secondly, the statements that some of these figures, as declared recently, creating interior problem to the organizations. You cannot create a problem between soldiers and their commanders by not giving them the really responsibility and the rights to do, because a commander of a battalion, which is sending his soldier to fight and to keep his life safety back, when he punishes someone, he is looking for what has been done, he is looking for the impact of what is done to the atmosphere in the battalion.
And you're referring to the incident in Hebron specifically,
in Hebron,
where Ben Gvir attacks the chief of staff.
Exactly.
Kochavi, do you feel like there's a danger that these guys are politicizing the military?
I think that there must be a very close, very clear wall, an eye wall, between the security organizations and between the political issue. This is a part of a democracy. The political will create the policy, will create the way. This is the second issue when you ask me about the government challenge between interfere the security inside or bringing a policy that can create threat to Israel. When the new political parties in the government, the coalition will create its policy for the future, it has to be calculating risks they are taking by some of their decisions. But under it, the complete system of the security should not be taught by anybody and leave it and make a great line between the way of political issue and the operative issue, because this is the main stone for Israel for the future.
Well, let's talk. I mean, you'd mentioned that you've been an aide, I guess, to three defense ministers in the past. Let's talk about who's going to be the next defense minister. It appears now, unless we have a big surprise in the last minute, that Netanyahu is going to appoint Yoav Galant, a former major general that you also are familiar with, to be the defense minister. He's also a former general. Do you expect this will be a seamless continuation from Gantz's defense minister, or will Galant bring a new approach?
Yoav Galant has a lot of experience. He fulfilled the mission of the commander of the South Command for, if I remember, for something like 5 years. He was also a military secretary for Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. And of course, he was supposed to be a chief of defense staff. So he brings a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience for special operations. And he knows, I think, the best that Bibi Netanyahu could choose for this mission. Someone who have the culture, who have the professionality, who have the experience from the security world with the political way as all. So he has the tools. How he will use them, I believe, as I know him, he will use them with a lot of sense and think deeply before he's launching. He should be understand, I think he understand, that in the new government, it's taking even new ministers, doesn't matter whether they are right or left, time to study the security issues. Statements are not activities. And you have to study which is activities you are doing. Israel is a complicated country. You have a lot of threats and you have a lot of impacts. For example, the Palestinian issue can impact the European Union and, of course, the United States with policy on other things. I saw it when I was in duty in my last 2 jobs. So Yoav Galant should be a balance and a right hand of Bibi Netanyahu for experience and responsibility towards ideologic and wish to change things quickly, rapidly, from, I think, some other ministers.
Well, that's a good point to give, I guess, probably try to sort of moderate that image. Another position it looks like that Netanyahu is going to try to appoint is to be Amir Ohana as the foreign minister, and he is openly gay, so that will be trying to also moderate a bit of that image. But how do you think the world and the Americans in particular are going to respond? Because it's not just military things. There's a lot of concerns the world has about this government when it comes to democracy, law and order, LGBT rights. I mean, we see Netanyahu trying to sort of temper that a little bit, but you've got these ultra-Orthodox parties, you've got these right-wing there who have spoken we cannot call them liberal, let's put it that way. So how do you think he's going to manage this conflict?
This is the main question mark, that how Bibi Netanyahu will decide to do it, how we will balance the issue. By the way, I have a lot of appreciation for the figures that are coming by, look, the way, for example, Smotrich made his negotiation with Bibi Netanyahu. He has his ideology, he running with it, and he got the tools for making his ideology coming to a reality. He's representative at least for 400,000 people who are living on Area C in the West Bank. So I think that Bibi Netanyahu, with his trail, will have to show a lot of a characterism of a really high leader if he has to be the prime minister, which brings Israel to issues with a lot of responsibility, because the sensitivity in the Middle East, the entering of the government is really in a junction while there are a lot of changes. And there are things that you are taking risks, there are opportunities, and he has to make it on a balance. I really cannot estimate today and to give you for sure we don't know development, sometime unexpected, but I think that Bibi Netanyahu should adopt his way of leading Israel on between 2009 to 2015. That was a lot of responsibility. He had other partners, you are right. Mm-hmm. And today his mission is much more difficult.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of those balance. You mentioned before the Abraham Accords. So Netanyahu led that, and that eventually led to normalization with 4 Arab countries. On the other hand, we see it's not really trickling down to the people. We even see that from the examples of Israeli reporters in Qatar now in the World Cup, how they're being treated by the streets. So you've got this distance between Netanyahu, who negotiated this, and yet has this government which is perceived as very militant, nationalistic, right wing. How do you think that these accords can hold, or are they shaky?
First of all, I would like to say in the beginning that you have to remember the peace agreement with Egypt. It took thousands of years since we came to what happened today, and it was not in Mubarak time, of course not in Morsi, and the development in Egypt changed a lot. So we need a lot of patience for changing a culture. It's very difficult to change a culture of a square in a capital of one of those Arab countries to millions of people who are educated in different way. But I believe that meanwhile, there are 2 agreements that are very strong. The agreement with Egypt and Jordan, and that has contact directly to the issue that Israel supplies gas to Egypt and to Jordan, something like more than very close to 90% of the Jordanian electricity is coming from the Israel gas energy. And it means by this one, you connected the countries to relationship for a generation, 25 years. This is something very strong. The other you need patience and you need to understand. But one thing that should be like orange lamp in a junction for the new government, that you cannot divide between the Palestinian issue and the Abraham Agreement, and it was by some of the people was like a meaning of doing it because they will not leave it. The leaders of the modern Arab countries are listening very carefully what's going in their squares, and they are sensitive to the feelings of their population. And I think that Bibi Netanyahu, even with all the ideology, should give his time to the Palestinian issue because it could break or could strengthen this kind of agreement.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for all that insight. Very interesting things. And thank you for joining us on this show. And we'll be right back after this with Game Changer.
Break.
Welcome back. It's time now for our Game Changer Corner. And today we're going into the world of electronic warfare and specifically into a new jamming system developed by IAI called Scorpius G. For that, I'm very happy to be joined by Gideon Fosdick, Director of Marketing and Business Development for the Intelligence and Communications Division at ELTA. Gideon, good to have you here with us today.
Hi, good to be here.
So let's get it started. Can you tell us a little bit about where we stand today in the world of electronic warfare? What's the latest on that front?
So first of all, what is electronic warfare? Ever since the Second World War, but more and more in recent years, armies depend on the use of the electromagnetic spectrum as part of their operations. So we use the spectrum for communication, for navigation, for sensing what the enemy is doing. And in electronic warfare, we try to manipulate, we try to fight within the spectrum to help us achieve our goals in the electromagnetic spectrum and to detect what the other side is doing and try to deny that. So it's kind of an arms race. We're trying to do something, we're trying to communicate, we're trying to send out a radar and see where they are, they're trying to block us, and vice versa.
Okay.
Until recently, yes, and we're seeing this coming into very, very strong play more and more in recent conflicts, including the current one. It's a new tool, a new weapon in the battlefield is an electronics warfare system that tries to deny, to jam, to take out the operations of the opponent in the electromagnetic field.
So you mentioned jamming there. That's a big part of this new tool here. And why is that so critical today?
So when things are going on, when the enemy is highly dependent on sensing something in the electromagnetic spectrum, for instance, using radar or imaging radar called SAR or ISAR as a tool to detect our forces and then to target them, and then a fire control radar on a combat aircraft to attack us, then if we can counter that with electronic measures, then with a non-lethal way, we can deny the enemy the ability to target us. We can deny them the ability to operate. So it becomes a crucial force multiplier in the modern battlefield.
So tell me a little bit about. So go ahead.
However, if you look at electronic warfare until recently, it's been kind of a targeted tool. So you've got some kind of electronic beam aimed somewhere in space, aimed at a radar, aimed at an aircraft, and trying to take that out. However, if you're aiming over there with some kind of focused energy, you're missing out on what's happening all over. Vice versa. Conversely, if you spread out a wide beam and you can target an entire area, but the energy you're sending out is highly defocused, you're not going to be very effective. So until now, there's always been a trade-off. Either you're going wide with low power, or you're going very, very narrow with high power and high sensitivity, but you're only seeing a small portion of the sky. And that's where Scorpius comes in, which is, as I said, it's an arms race between a system and a counter system. And we feel with Scorpius, we're breaking through to a new level, leapfrogging this challenge, because Scorpius can do both. It can scan the entire sky simultaneously, actually stare at the entire sky simultaneously, and simultaneously send out multiple narrow focused beams. What this means is that you can break the trade-off I talked about earlier. You can see everything that's going on to very, very long distances and simultaneously address and take out multiple targets across the sky, which means that instead of an electronic warfare system being something that takes out a specific target, it's something that can protect your entire airspace and detect and take out any target in that airspace. So that makes it a game changer. It turns electronic warfare from a specific weapon targeting something out there to an electronic defense, which might be seen as another layer in a complete system of air defense, another layer aside your kinetic effectors, but electronic defense, which can take out all kinds of targets.
Great.
So it adds an immense new capability to your defense portfolio.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for detailing all that. And that does it for this episode of Defense Matters. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to all of our guests for joining us today. A reminder to please subscribe wherever you get our podcast. We're on YouTube and Apple and Anchor and Spotify, and lots of different places. So please click and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Aron Heller. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Defense Matters.